And we welcome you to United in Liberty Radio, where we discuss all things principled. This is Joe Olivas here with Dustin Harris. We have a lot to discuss today, but I'm excited to be here. Dustin, what are you wearing?
It's my mosque. I'm wearing a mosque today.
You're wearing a mosque today.
That's right. It's kind of celebration of our last week's show. Of course, we talked about mosques one particular mosque.
I think those were different types of mosques.
Oh yeah,
not the one that you're wearing.
Not the Red Riding Hood mosque.
No, but I mean it's. Wait
cute. A minute, is that a racist Red Riding Hood? The hood part, does that have anything to do with?
You know, I don't. Somebody somewhere is going to go ahead and get offended and complain
Probably so. Good thing this is radio and they can't actually see the mosque.
We're going to be arrested for hate crimes or something.
Probably true. Probably true. Hey, I just wanted to clarify.
But you know, just to be clear, as far as being arrested for hate crimes, I mean, I hate crime. So
as long as you're on the record with that, we're good.
Yeah.
I just want to clear up one thing from last week. Of course, we talked about the mosque in New York City, and we got some feedback. A little bit of feedback. Was it 2 weeks ago we talked about that? Last week. You know what? I'm not sure. It was last
so
week.
much that goes on.
Last week. Okay, so we got some. I got some feedback after our show last week. I honestly don't know whether these emails were positive or negative. They were simply, just comments about the radio show. I just want to make sure I clarify one thing before we get into our subject matter today, Joe.
Okay.
And that is this. If it wasn't clear last week, let me make it clear today. What we are trying to do on this radio show that makes us and sets us apart from the national scene. I mean, you turn on any national talk show the last week, and what are they talking about? Mosques. They're talking about this mosque and that mosque and hate crimes and Muslims and this, that, and the other. And you've got leaders in the Islam faith saying this, that, and the other about the United States of America. And people are so worked up about these things. This is what sets United in Liberty Radio apart from others. I would hope that those who listen to this podcast each week are stepping outside the emotional, feel-good mantra that they're hearing on every other show. If nothing else, last week, what I was trying to get across, and I think you're with me on this, Joe, is that there is a principle behind everything. And if you can step aside and let your emotions not get a hold of you and listen to the principle of the whole thing, there's something to be learned about what's going on in New York. Whether you want the mosque in New York or not doesn't matter when it comes down to principle. What matters is, do they have the right to build it?
And you cannot say that they do not have the right simply because someone who's had a belief system that was relating to, or that was a Muslimic belief system that was responsible for the terrorist attacks. You cannot say that all Muslims everywhere were responsible for the terrorist attacks.
Right.
Just like you couldn't say that all white males were responsible for the racial treatment that black men had received, or just like you can't say that all those who are Latin Americans entered the country illegally.
Right.
You can't do that. And so now there is a place for emotion. One of the things but you have to exercise your emotion in a very principled way. And here's something that I read that was really interesting after our show as well. I know this is really off topic, but there are individuals who are refusing, because of their emotional feelings on this issue, are refusing to build the mosque.
Right.
Okay. Now, they've got their constitutional right to not be forced to work for something that they personally have a belief in, or that they have a belief against coming to fruition.
Well, I hope they're not part of a union, but you're right.
But now if they get in the way from somebody else doing it, now they're violating the rights of that individual as well as those that are building. So there is a place for emotion. However, you exercise your emotion, or you act or respond with your emotion in a principle-based manner, then you're always going to be found on the right side of principle, as opposed to just strictly responding based upon the the emotion without looking for or trying to find the principle.
Perfect. Yeah, and I want to get into the topic of today, but I'll end by saying this, because we got some more mail after the show. The show was trying to clear up some mail that we got before the show. I got some more follow up after the show. I don't know whether the individual listened to the show or not. Let me end by saying this. Last week's show was about rights, was about principles. Okay, though we may have made comment here and there about whether they should or should not do this or that, that doesn't have anything to do with right. In other words, there are two questions. Should the mosque be built in New York in the shadow of Ground Zero, and do they have the right to build the mosque? Those are two different questions. Should Obama make a statement about the mosque? Does he have the right to make a statement about the mosque? Those are two different questions. I will say this. On the should the mosque be built or should Obama have made the comments, I would probably say probably no and no. Okay? That's an emotional gut feeling. Do they have the right to build the mosque? Absolutely. Does he have a right to say what he said? Absolutely. Do I think it was stupid? Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out that way, because this is a lot of smaller issues that's rolled up into one big issue, and so when you break it down that way and you look at it and you analyze should something take place, I mean the correct answer is really it depends,
right?
And it
from
depends
whose perspective?
on from whose perspective, and who's paying for it. The governor was the one ready to offer some free land.
Yeah.
That would have made it even worse to have taxpayers then pay for what they were emotionally worked up about in the first place. And so, it's important to look at the principle and try and find the principle rather than we can get really caught up in the emotional feelings that are taking place. And I've got my own personal opinions about the mosque and it being built. But however, my own personal opinions, if they're not directly related to principle, really are of no consequence in the large scheme of things. Because at the same time, if I want somebody to protect my rights, I have to be able to stand up and protect their rights, even if I may not entirely agree with what they're doing.
Right. And I hope our listeners are a step above the typical conservative talk radio listeners. Just because Glenn Beck or Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Michael Medved, or we could just keep naming them off, just because they said it doesn't make it principle-based. I hope that we're starting to question things, even if we hear them from our favorite radio talk show, and start to ask ourselves, was what that individual just said principle-based? That's what we need to ask ourselves.
And if the individual that you are, that you're listening to, or if the individuals that you're having the conversations with don't have the principle-based answers, it's a real teaching moment to be able to teach them about principles, to have them be able to recognize the principles even more. I can guarantee you that Glenn Beck and Limbaugh and a lot of these other conservative talk, if they were much more direct in the questioning of their guests as relating to what principles they advocate, meaning they're having a guest that maybe is for this mosque, right, and they said, under what principles would you want this to be built? You're going to get a much stronger understanding of that individual based upon their answer as they try to identify a principle. Because if they can't identify a principle for the reason they're doing what they're doing,
it's an emotion.
That's right. And so that gets swayed. Individuals' emotions do get swayed based upon who is screaming the loudest, or based upon the information that you're provided. What if, again, this isn't what we're going to be talking about today, but what if the mosque that was going to be built further away? What if it was going to be built, another 50 miles away from New York, from Ground Zero, 50 miles away.
Right.
But it was going to be completely taxpayer funded. It was going to be on government land, and it was going to be